like to shake, rattle, and troll.
It's time for the award-winning Shake, Rattle, and Troll.
Yeah, kiss the one that rock your favorite ponies. Me and the boys gonna shake.
A show for the serious fishermen as well as the novice looking for tips from the pros. Shake, Rattle, and Troll, brought to you by Bill Luke Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram. I-17 and Camelback Road since 1927.
Yeah, we got the power, we got the speed. We're running wide open on a midsummer breeze. Freshwater, saltwater, watch out, boys. Bass Daddy Don's gonna make some noise. It's me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and
Now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
Yes, sir. Hey, I'm Don McDowell. Welcome to our Super Bowl edition.
Hey, good.
Did you bring the tire pump?
No, I did not.
We got to pump up the ball.
All I need is the gauge to know how many pounds of pressure there are.
You know, when are they going to finish this up after the Super Bowl?
Oh, of course.
Tomorrow morning?
No, it'll be 2, 3, 4 weeks from now.
They sweep it under the rug.
Quite frankly, I don't think there's anything to be said about that. And, it just
You know
happens.
what they're going to do? They're going to blame the ball boy.
The ball boy was in the bathroom for 90 seconds. My assumption is he was doing what nature does. He was going to the bathroom. He didn't.
Let the air out. That's what we do.
No, we don't. No, we don't. Well, look who's here.
We have a very special guest today from AZGFD. Yes, sir, the Ivory Tower, Jim Paxson.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah, and your official title and capacity is Chief of Public Information. Is that correct?
No, I'm that was the old position, Don.
That was the old one. Okay.
Yep. Now I'm special assistant to the director.
Ooh.
You know what that means,
That
don't
sounds
you?
like a can of worms right there.
Yeah, that means that I do whatever he says I need to do right now, and that's an awful lot.
Wow.
He's a busy guy thinking, and there's never a dull moment at Game and Fish.
Well, with Director Boyles, God bless him, he does a great job, but he's kind of like a bad rash. He's just all over the planet.
Well, not only that, but from the hunting community aspect of it, we know he goes a lot to a lot of different places, whether it's WAFA, whether it's Washington, D.C., and you have some of those secrets as to what's going on.
Well, they're all tied to jobs, get stuff done, John. So, yeah. But Director Voiles is leading the department, and, of course, he's the president of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, which is 50 states, 7 Canadian provinces, and Mexico. And he's leading that group for a year through the end of September. And he has some high hopes that he'll be able to pull many of the state wildlife agencies together to speak with one voice, especially when talking to the president's administration and to Congress.
What's up with Mexico? That has some interesting connotations right there.
Well, it does. There's so much connectivity to Mexico. In fact, Director Voiles is down there at an international meeting for wildlife. He'll be back Wednesday, I believe. And there's so much connectivity, and we've got so much in common with Mexico. Everything from black-tailed prairie dog to pronghorn antelope to, of course, the Mexican wolf. We're connected, and animals have no knowledge or respect for boundaries, so they move across as habitat permits.
You're getting on a sore subject talking about boundaries and borders, but yeah, I
with,
get that.
With many people.
Yeah. I'm going to move right by that.
I think the biggest aspect we've seen, and of course as sportsmen, we're very concerned with we call it MGW, the Mexican gray wolf, and the fact that Mexico has historically, over the past 20 years, had such a minor role in it, and we're asking that they become more involved with it, and that they actually take the lead on the recovery efforts.
We agree, and we only have 10% of the habitat in all of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona for the Mexican wolf. So
that was its historic range.
Yeah, historic range. So it's primary that if we're going to recover that endangered species, it's going to happen here, but mainly in Mexico. And they have their first pups that are at accountable age down there. They've made it through to the first year to be counted. So.
Oh, really? So they did.
Yeah.
So they had a release, and that pair had pups, and those pups have made it through the first year.
Yeah, they've had 2 releases, and there've been several wolves put out, and we know that one pair survived and had pups. So.
Oh, good.
That's a positive direction.
What was it? The first 5 that evaporated?
They weren't. No, they died of. I know some of them died of poisoning. I know that was one of the issues that they had.
I was trying to be politically correct.
Don't be. Some of the cowboys down there didn't want to see any part of that.
Yeah.
So, but there's areas that are much more remote that they can do the releases on, and that I think that their choice of where. If you try and put them closer to the United States border, you're into more of what I'll call some cattle country. The further south you get, I think there's more of an opportunity for them to survive.
Yeah.
More mountainous.
Jim, let me ask you this. Taking Texas as a whole, I know there was a little sliver back on the recovery map. Texas said, no, take that off. They did. Originally, how much of Texas was in that historic range?
I think just the Big Bend area.
Okay.
Probably some of that Fort Davis, Alpine Marfa country, but mostly it was the Big Bend.
Interesting. Donnie's going to Texas on a hog and whitetail hunt.
Oh, boy.
February 10th.
He's going to have fun.
Yeah, he'll be back just in time to, unpack, repack, and grab the trailer. We're going up to 20C to hunt javelinas with the almost all the grandkids this year. 2 of my grandkids have their tags. Mason is quite the hunter. He's gotten bull tags and this and that tag. But Mallory, my oldest granddaughter, has her first javelina tag. First tag ever.
Great.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Big highlight in my life, I introduced her to Jenny Rigo up at Sportsman's Warehouse. And they had the girl talk in the camo department. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'm surprised she didn't come out with a bow.
Yeah, Jenny will get her there.
Well, this Wednesday she's making friends with a Savage bolt action 340A 3030.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So,
I've had this question in the back of my head for the longest time that I wanted to ask you.
Well, come on, John.
Okay. For the longest time, you worked within the federal government, and now you've had some period of time within the state agencies. What do you see as the best or worst differences between the entities as you see it?
Well, I really did have a blessed career with the Forest Service. I spent 34 years with them. I was 22 years as a district ranger, and every single year of that I was in fire. And I came up through the organization. We called it digging dirt, building fire line, hiking hills, fighting fire. And I ended my career as a spokesman for fire. And many people remember the Rodeo Chetasky, but I was also on the Dude Fire, where we lost 6 firefighters in Zane Gray's cabin back in 1990 north of Payson. And I think I really had a wonderful career. I was on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But the Forest Service is a big outfit. There's about 40,000 employees nationwide. And I've been almost 5 years with Game and Fish now. And we have about 630 something employees. And in that time, I've gotten to know at least 500 of them. And it's a much smaller outfit. And the thing that continually impresses me and makes me glad to be part of Game and Fish is the professionalism, the integrity that these people manage with. If you look at some of our human resources statistics, we've got 107 of our folks that have advanced degrees, masters.
Sure. Yep.
We got 21 PhDs in little old bitty Game and Fish. 640 people, and we got 21 doctorates out there, and there's in that there's a couple of Juris doctors, lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a much more community-oriented, almost familial organization. And a lot of folks get into it before they get out of college and stay there until they retire. And it's just it's been a wonderful opportunity. So I'm twice blessed in my careers.
Okay, here's another one, and we can carry this into the next segment, but I've always wanted to ask somebody who worked within the Forest Service this. Do you think Smokey the Bear was the worst thing ever to happen? Because we stopped fires all the time, and we never let anything burn, and of course what you've seen over the last 50 years has been the overgrowth of the forest system.
Boy, that's a very difficult question. How much time do we have?
Let her rip.
Take it up to kickoff.
In 1910, the big burn occurred in Montana and Idaho.
That's what I didn't know. So 1910 was what we're calling the big burn?
Yep. 4 million acres burned in 3 days. 85 people died. 78 of them were firefighters. The Weeks Law passed in Congress in 1911. They decided that fire was bad, and they gave state foresters the ability to use federal excess equipment and get funding to put out fires. So really it started then. It didn't start when Smokey Bear, because Smokey Bear came along in World War II.
Yeah, 1946 I think it was.
Well, 42 was when he first showed in cartoons. And,
okay.
That was Save Forest for the war effort.
Ah.
The Forest Service had a shift, and in the late 70s they began to embrace prescribed fire, natural fire. The Forest Service was cutting too much timber, and the environmentalists took us to task for that, rightly so. We were above sustainable efforts, but still cutting timber provided employment, it provided roads, recreation, taxes to counties, on and on and on. So the demise of the timber industry was one of the most frustrating things that I lived with.
That's a good thought. Pretty interesting. Man, you're all over Smokey the Bear.
We'll chat about that more later.
I'm going to share Chapter 13 from Dr. Seuss with you as soon as this segment's over. We're going to flip into a break. Thanks to some of our sponsors that make this possible, including Bill Luke, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, I-17, and West Camelback Road since 1927. I'm here with
Special K
and
Jim Paxson.
We'll be right back. A little toe tapping music for you there, JK.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, buddy. Alrighty, visiting with Jim Paxton. What an interesting career, man. How many years in the woods?
34 with the Forest Service, and now 5 with Game and Fish.
That's amazing. That's
truly.
I wish I could say that I had spent that amount of time in the woods.
The wonderful part about the Forest Service was my last week at work, I was on the ground every day.
Really?
I was out with permittees, riding and checking trails and doing some things with my wilderness kids, and that was the way I finished up my career. And I chose not to go up to Washington D.C. and to be a forest supervisor. There was a cohort, a group of rangers that wanted to be on the ground to influence kids, to work with our communities, to actually be managing with our permittees and doing things on the ground. And there's a number of them that are still working, but they're becoming fewer and fewer. And that's a trend. But, I can think of guys right here in Arizona. There's a fellow up there at Lakeside that's been there, I think, 26 years as a ranger, and that's just unheard of in today's world.
Yeah, they try and move them around a whole lot more. I've noticed that in the Apache Sitgraves in the Black Mesa Ranger District, there was a lot of turnover for a consistent period of time. People would be there only 2, 3, 4 years, and then they're out the door. So one of the things you just mentioned is working with the permittees, and I understand one of the if you want to call it there's a mark, a little tagline for the environmental groups. They are really going hot and heavy after the ranching community on public lands as permittees. And we've seen, I consider them to be stewards of the land. And there are more good, by far, cattle ranchers out there than there are people who devastate the land. They may have not been right around the turn of the century where there was overgrazing, but I think now if you talk to most of those ranchers, they know, they do their range forage monitoring. They know exactly how much food is available, and they turn their cattle into pastures, on a regular basis. They rotate their pastures. They seem to do a really good job. What's your experience with most of those guys?
It's the same bell curve that's in society. You do have a few bad ones, but you also have a few that are excellent and outstanding in every way. The great majority of ranchers truly care for the land. I mean, they're not going to make any money if they don't have any grass to feed their cows and grow their calves. Ranchers work off of calf weight and numbers, and it's just it's amazing to me. If you look, they maintain fences, they maintain trails, water holes. They're drilling wells and putting solar on old windmills and doing things that are cutting edge technology, not just to make a dollar, but so that their kids and their grandkids will have the same opportunity.
Yeah.
They're in it for the long haul, and I just my hat's off to the cowboys and the ladies that are out there actually protecting land. And guys like Jim Ohako up there, they're providing wildlife habitat, and they're building their fences so that antelope can get through, and they're doing things that are in a positive nature, and they love wildlife as much as we do. We would be in a really bad shape if they left the land.
That's the key, is what would supplant them. If they're gone, if they're forced off the land because, say, somebody drives up the price per AUM to the point where it's unreasonable, or per acre of how much they can or can't do, or what the costs are per their acre, who's going to take over if they're not there?
I don't know.
That's the push we're seeing this week. The antis are squalling about grazing rights and the associated cost of it, and after reading 13 pages of it, I'm not sure I can get a grip on what their complaint is.
They want more money out of the ranchers, but then then you're destroying the cost benefit profit ratios of any business. If you were to suddenly charge me 5 times more for just for the business that I run, couldn't sustain it. Can't do it.
Yeah.
One of the things that a lot of folks don't realize is the Forest Service is in a real money crunch.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's really impacted is recreation management. It used to be a fire crew and a trail crew on every single district. In Arizona and New Mexico, there's a little over 60 districts. Now you got a trail crew, 1 per forest.
Oh.
They don't get around to the trails but about once every 3 years, and then it's the main trails. When these folks are out hiking, most of those trails, if they're cleared and the downfall's off of them and they can get through, it's done because of the ranchers.
Yeah.
Good point.
Nobody else is out there. I look at the water hauling that they do on a lot of those occasions, and I attend the PNRC meetings, so I know, Woody Klein and Johnny Johnson and Ray Tanner and all those guys, Bob Benet, they have all of those ranchers up there. They're very concerned all year long about everything that goes on the land. And I admire how hard it is, that they do it and they love what they do and they're out there doing it. Most of these guys now, they've got other money that's coming in. They have to supplant what they're trying to do because the profit margins are so slender. And I've watched them. They're very concerned about everything that goes on out there. Ray Tanner can tell me every kind of weed, noxious weed, whether it's chaparral, whether it's manzanita, whether it's whatever kind of tree structure that's out there, whether you're going to use agrax or shears or whether you're going to use the pulpers, when you're knocking down trees. These are all things that most people who live in the city, who try and make the decisions for, rural lifestyle, have no clue about what's going on.
Well, because they're there every day, they have a handle on that, and because it's important to know what plants are good and what plants are could kill a cow,
noxious,
then they need to be able to manage those and not so much go out and remove them, but stay away from them when they're in the poisonous state and move their cows to a different place. But that water and that salt and the mineral that's out there, the wildlife use it. And if that were gone, we'd have a lot less wildlife.
Yeah, we would. Yeah. And unfortunately, most people don't understand that benefit ratio for wildlife, that, the waters that are out there for cattle, wildlife doesn't know the difference. They see water, they're doing what they need to do. And particularly through the dry periods that we've had over the last 20 years, it's been really necessary for us to have that kind of support from the ranching community for water to be retained in any way, shape, or form. So.
How many ranches do we have in Arizona?
Oh, I have no clue.
I don't know.
No. There's a boatload of them still, some small.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, all doing a good job. So, you guys were talking about Smokey the Bear, and Smokey the Bear actually died when?
In November of 1976, he was at the Washington National Zoo. This was the bear that was found on the Capitan Gap fire in 1950 in New Mexico.
The burned cub.
Yep, the burned cub.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Things you learn here on Shake, Rattle, and Troll. I thought Smokey the Bear was an offshoot of Disneyland.
No, I knew that.
Okay. Hey, we're going to flip into a break. When we come back. More education from our buddy Jim Paxton from AZGFD. I'm Don McDowell with
Jim Paxton.
And
John Colazar.
What do you know about coyotes in Michigan, JK?
Oh, we got to talk about that.
Ooh.
With a ranger's hat and shovel and a pair of dungarees, you will find him in the forest, always sniffing at the breeze. People stop and pay attention when he tells them to beware, 'cause everybody knows that he's the fire-preventing bear. Smokey the Bear, Smokey the Bear, growling and a-growling and a-sniffing in the air. He can find a fire
before it starts to flame. That's why they call him Smokey. That's how he got his name.
Oh, Jen,
we have
that's
made history.
Impressive.
Sing it, Jim.
You do know that.
On the Smokey Bear District, when you went to work there, the ranger made you sing Smokey the Bear.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it was hilarious. An old guy named Ray Page that's still with us, but it was just a great, fun experience.
I met Jim over at the Metro Center at the military vehicle show. He was palling around with a guy, Paul Miller, and he said, I taught this guy to shoot about 40 years ago. Did you get the hang of it?
Yeah, I did.
Rumor has it you're kind of a dandy pistol shot.
Yeah, well, I used to compete in USPSA practical shooting, and then I shot in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association.
Practical shooting now, that differs from hanging a 9mm out the car window shooting with your left hand while shifting gears in your Corolla.
This is run and gun combat sport kind of shooting.
My man.
And I was Paul Miller was an excellent teacher. He's a master in several disciplines. He owns a shooting range up in Montrose, Colorado, and really a good friend. And he did teach me well.
Well, that's a little known fact about Brother Jim here.
Yeah. I need somebody needs to seriously take me aside someday and teach me how to shoot, because I'm a terrible shot. And I recognize that.
Look, the bow mag has come out. I know you're.
No, I am never going to use a bow mag.
You're talking to Jim Hinkle about the bow mag, and I'm stunned just at the dialogue. Is it illegal? Are you kidding me?
Well, it's a weapon, but you're combining archery with a bullet. And that's.
I think personally, it's a novel idea.
Yeah, novel.
One of the problems with archery is it's way too quiet. Pow!
I love the quiet of archery.
I'm kidding.
Archery I can do all day long, and that for me is the most fun. But in terms of a practical shooter with a weapon, a rifle or a handgun, I'm horrid. And
you haven't lived until you put a 12-gauge shotgun shell on the end of a bang stick and get in with the sharks.
I'll pass on that, thank you. Since
a lot
I
of
can't
fun.
swim.
I'm a landlubber.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
So it's similar technology.
And I'm not going to go there.
All right.
Nope. You can't get me in the water with a bang stick. Nope.
What are some of your visions for 2015 that you see on the horizon with the department?
one of Director Voil's primary objectives is working with communities. You know, down there at Tucson, we've got just a wonderful example with that Catalina Bighorn Sheep Reintroduction Advisory Committee. In fact, they got the commission award, the group conservation award. And the whole premise of that is we needed to put sheep back on the mountain. They'd been there for eons till they kind of winked out due to a lot of factors in the late 80s, early 90s. And in order to do that, we needed public support. So we got 4 environmental organizations and 4 sportsmen's organizations and put them at the same table. And you guys were at the banquet. If you watched, there was actually some good-natured, I wouldn't call it affection, but there was some ribbing and some carrying on that they had relationships. And we've got Center for Biological Diversity and Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society. I don't know how you get any further to the polar opposites, sitting at a table attacking issues instead of pointing bony fingers at each other. This is a model that we want to carry throughout the state in many of our projects. And only where we get the community to buy in and be part of wildlife conservation and the solutions to the problems we face will we have wildlife in the future to the degree that we want. And so what we need to do is to carry that same model and involve local governments, local citizens, local organizations, even some with whom we don't agree, to get them to the table. Now, what it takes on those folks is being willing to come to the table and perhaps put aside their prejudices and see where we can agree to go forward. And that's what this advisory committee has done. There have been some pretty tough meetings.
Oh, boy.
I would suspect they would be. I would be hard-pressed based on the historic opportunities that we've had to sit down and do something together and felt like we got shivved in the back on more than one occasion with them. I think that in an intellectual manner, I can agree to sit down at a table with darn near anybody. But when their philosophical manner says, I don't want to see a hunter out there in the woods ever, and I say, I want to see me out there the rest of my natural-born life along with my children's lives and my grandchildren's lives, I don't know that you can ever bridge that gap. Could I sit down with the HSUS? No. The CBD, because of all the species, we have to work with them in some way, shape, or form. But they are so, it's kind of like the big bully. I mean, they seem to dictate in more than anybody I've ever seen in terms of, I think even the federal government's afraid of them, to be honest. I mean, you watch the litigation efforts that they carry. I don't think so,
JK. DOJ's all over these guys.
We've seen some decisions that have come down that I question where they're not public record. That scares me. When you can have a decision like that.
I think that boils down to another subject I don't really want to get on, but it starts with Obama and filters all the way down.
Well, with regard to those, we agree. HSUS and probably PETA, I'm not sure that we will ever be able to sit at the table with them.
No, but Sierra Club, you can, on an issue-by-issue basis, work with them. I understand that. There are certain things you can, and we certainly do need to, rather than to be vilified, we need to sit down and work on some things and try and find a common ground, because I think we all care in some way, shape, or form. They are more protectionists and we are conservationists, and that's the big difference.
The common ground is exactly where we need to be, John. Where can we agree? What is it that we want? We all love wildlife. And then if we can define what that means, if you just take bighorn sheep, we were looking at this. In the last 10 years, we've made $1.5 million and spent $6 million on bighorn sheep management. Mm-hmm. This is not in it for selling big game tags and seeing what we can kill out there. It's in it so that species remains, And in 1957, there was less than 1,000 sheep in Arizona and only 11 herds that were all in a declining condition.
Yeah.
And the department back then took a really aggressive sheep management plan to transplant sheep on vacant mountaintops and cliffs and canyons and that sort of thing where their habitat was primary. And today, this Catalina Bighorn sheep herd, when we get it established, will be the 32nd herd. And now we have over 6,000 sheep in the state. And we're transplanting. We've sent 800 sheep to Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and Old Mexico. So this is a successful program,
wow.
And it's on the back of sportsmen. They're the ones that have financed and endured, and those people that we sit at the table with have actually recognized that, and we've got an agreement from the Wilderness Society and Center for Biological Diversity that in order to reestablish those sheep on the mountain, we're going to have to kill mountain lions that eat sheep.
Yep.
And they've agreed. So we have made some major headway with this group.
That's all pluses because historically, I mean, if you go back 6 years ago, they didn't want a single lion touched in the COFAs.
Right.
World changes.
It does. Indeed it is. When we come back, we're going to forego roll call. We do not have any soldiers killed in theater this past week that we're aware of. However, at the top of the hour, we are going to recognize an Arizona Tucson sailor, specialist seaman apprentice, Ashley Shawalik.
She's going to a party.
Going to the Super Bowl.
All right.
She serves on the USS John C. Stennis, big aircraft carrier. Cool. Anyway, we'll be right back.
It just comes natural.
Yeah. All right, boys, follow me. Mostly in A. Stay with me now. Listen up. This is philosophical.
We're back. Hey, thanks for hanging with us. Boy, I jumped up this morning, went outside, flipped on the light, headed down Rosecrans, trying to find the dock. What a San Diego morning.
It was.
Oh, I love
Still is.
Days like this. Question is, are they going to open the dome at the ballpark?
Yes.
Good.
Going to be open today. It'll be sunny. It'll be perfect.
It'll be a beautiful day. This fog's just got to burn off. It reminds me, I started out with the Forest Service in East Texas, and speed limit would be posted 55, and you'd drive 40 because that's as far as your headlights would see. Pretty soupy. Today's pretty soupy.
Yeah, boy.
I noticed that this morning. I was only doing
that
60.
In Texas on a foggy day. You know how many deer there are in Texas out on the highway?
Not a good thing.
I'm telling you, last time we went into Del Rio, Texas, man, foggy day like today, following a tractor and trailer. The guy never even hit his brakes when he hit the herd of deer.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. All you could see was a puff of smoke, and away we go. Got him on the CB. He said, "You all right?" He goes, "Yeah." I think I knocked out a headlight. Over. Come on. Keep it going. A lot of deer down there. This last episode we had, last week we had a dissertation on fair chase. Any update on that?
It's a continuing dialogue. We sent 3 of our guys over to the SHOT Show just to wander the halls and see what new technology there is. Things
Some
like
scary stuff out there right
smart
now.
rifles. And,
oh boy, yeah.
And of course drones. And our regional supervisor from Kingman, Tom Finley, is the lead on that
right.
that group. And Tom is a dyed in the wool hunter. His 15-year-old daughter got her first elk this year. So
nice.
He's growing people in the traditional fashion of sportsmen and respect for wildlife. So we don't know what's going to come out of that, but we know that we're going to continue to pursue excellence, and so that fair chase means that we don't have an advantage over the animal, that they can't escape through normal means, that we have them kind of tied by one foot so they can't get away. Things like smart rifles and that sort of thing just aren't appropriate for sportsmen.
Shooting out to 1,500 yards? No, thank you.
No, well, something that locks on an animal and you just pull the trigger and you don't have to be a marksman. If somebody can shoot, I'm all for them to be able to shoot. But if there's an advantage and it takes away,
it doesn't take
the
any
fair
skill.
element. Yeah,
that's the key.
That's not right.
Right.
And we're going to try to Our commission has directed us to come up with some language that they can pass in a rule where we will ensure that fair chase is retained. That's one of the primary elements we manage under.
I think the rules are fairly clear. You know, if you pass the third grade, what I'm stunned about is like this bowl mag. Mm-hmm. All the dissertation and all the emails and, you know, they're going back and forth. Well, why isn't it legal? Come on,
serious?
Yeah. Yeah. The smart technology that's coming out of the military, that we're seeing in the private sector, it's frightening. Just absolutely frightening.
You know, one of the things we talk about sometimes, and I've had issues with it. I don't own one. And I know people who own, 20, 30 of them, or trail cams. When you can, if you have an area of the food, you want to put them out there. Real time, you're sitting at home down here in Phoenix watching what's going on in your favorite place that you want to hunt. You've got corridors set up. I see it as a prevention for people, whether it's the lack of time or lack of energy. I haven't decided which, but certainly I know that when you haven't the ability to go out and actually walk it and to work the land and to understand where wildlife should be through experience versus sitting at home watching through a camera, that to me bothers me. That's not for everybody. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but for me personally, I can't see doing that on a regular basis. Nor can I see paying somebody $10,000 to find me a bull that scores 420. But that's me. Well,
that too is being looked at in fair chase. The committee is really working hard to try to determine what some of those trends are and how we can be legitimate in our language. Trail cams is one thing, but when it gives you alarm on your phone that 200-inch class deer just walked through, mm-hmm. and you can get in your razor and run up there and be ready for him when he walks through the next camera, that's not fair chase.
Nope.
And we want to avoid that. Ethical sportsmen, we think, will avoid that. Some of those who are using that technology simply have not grown up like we three did.
Exactly.
Chasing those deer with granddad and dad, mm-hmm. and understanding the ways of the land. So the department also feels like we need to do a really good job of educating folks, and you both know that we can't do that with just the department. We've got to have the sportsmen's organizations, and we have such a wonderful relationship. And I think Doug Burt told me that there was 43 game caps last year, and they're going to have like 50 this year. That's great. But we're still just kind of scratching the surface, and what we need to do is educate these 4.5 million people in Maricopa County as to what the values of wildlife are and why we want them out there and how we manage and how we work with our federal partners who have the land mass and with our other groups like the cowboys that are out there ranching, like the folks that are developing wind energy, like those who are farming on the land and have to make a living. So to me, this is all of us working together for common goals. And those common goals are wildlife into the future and the betterment of the land.
We're hoping for the same kinds of efforts, and I think part of it's going to have to be in the educational system because so many kids never get out of the city anymore, sure. or because they're tied to videos. We need to get inside the educational system to explain the facts of life, which is real, which is some things need to pass. Some animals need to die in order that others will survive. And the process of life and death cycle that must go on in order for us to continue what we're doing. And for people to even see wildlife, they have to understand that. It's the same concept that people see with the Wild Horses Act. When you have way too many of a species, something has to happen. Right now they're just picking them up and taking them into holding pens all across the West. It's not going to work long term.
That budget's over.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's way out of control. Unfortunately, people don't understand the concept because when I was a kid growing up, my grandparents had a butcher shop. We would go out and slaughter a pig, and that would take care of our family for a whole year. The food that came out of that animal, the smokehouse that he had, people don't understand the life and death cycle of animals and that we, in theory, are at top of the food chain. And that's my personal perspective on it.
Yeah, we've got to help those, and we're big about that. We have a lady who touched 1,000 fourth grade classrooms last year.
Who's that?
Sam.
Okay.
And if she was 3 people instead of 1, we could triple that. But I don't think that's going to be in the budget. So, we've got several volumes of North American model curricula that Kelly Tharp developed, and it's being used nationwide. And that can get in, but we've got to get into those 7th grade science classrooms.
Absolutely.
And get those teachers informed of it so that they'll use it. And so we're seeking every avenue that we can. If folks have an idea that we can use, we're willing to listen and try to put them to work too. All of the zoos and the wildlife recovery operations and folks who see live animals, we're trying to get interpretive sites into those, and Phoenix Zoo is one of our biggest partners for that, so that they understand ecology, they understand life and death and the cycle of predator prey.
Yes.
And so we're working, but I don't think that we're doing enough, and we need partners to help us.
Amen. We agree with that.
Well, the department's come a long ways, and kind of mirrored what you said when we first started. We've got a tremendous amount of commitment, and 637 employees. It's pretty incredible. And the people, and I've said this before, and I'll say it in the future. I wish the public could know you guys like we know you guys, working shoulder to shoulder with you, weekly, daily, monthly, annually, and know the level of commitment that you have. It's not just a job.
Thank you, Don, and we feel the same with our partners. So
yeah, buddy,
you guys are in it with us. We appreciate that.
In it to win it. Hey, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
New England.
Betcha.
Seattle.
New England.
What about Dallas? Come on. We'll be right back.
Here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
All righty, we're back. Okay, it's Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, what is it? Pizza, wings, what?
I try and steer clear of that, to be honest with you.
Well,
serious. It's just, you can consume, and I started looking at the holiday season, and it starts just at Halloween, and it ends at Super Bowl. And in between that is some of the most consumptive times and weight gains and everything else under the sun.
Absolutely. Well, we put a moratorium on the maple bars from Dunkin' Donuts for a while.
We have. I appreciate that.
Man, I'm telling you, dragging those Dunkin' Donuts over the hills and dales, whoa, not easy.
Yeah.
Okay, we put the word out. We were going to have religious program specialist seaman apprentice Ashley Shawalik from Tucson, and this is kind of an interesting story. We have some Navy in our history, in the family tree. My dad got arrested for shooting craps aboard ship. And this girl, I'm just saying.
The apple didn't fall far from the tree. Is that what you're saying? Or?
What? No, that's not what I'm saying. Aboard the USS John C. Stennis, a big aircraft carrier floating around out there, they had a morale booster bingo game. And I'm just drawing an analogy. They used to play craps.
Now they play bingo.
Now they play bingo. Go figure. Anyway, Ashley won 2 tickets to the Super Bowl, so they helicoptered her and her POC off of the Stennis into San Diego. They hopped in a G-car, drove to the venue, and they're having some kind of a malfunction, and we can't get her. But anyway, she's from Tucson, doing a great job aboard ship. On the website, you can see what we've done. If you click on Veterans, we have a whole page. I don't know if you know this or not, but we've been adopted by the United States Navy.
All right.
Really cool stuff. We have about probably 24 or so Arizona resident sailors currently engaged in Navy stuff profile up on the website. It's worth taking a look at. Also, you'll find tributes to known Arizona soldiers killed in action in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places. That being said,
well, I hope she gets to the Super Bowl. That's a great venue, and that just shows our appreciation. The department also has high regard for all those who have served, and particularly those who didn't come home.
Absolutely. This is kind of a heartwarming story. She wanted to share the Super Bowl with her dad. So that's kind of what's going on. And, this talking with her PLC the other day, family time for these Navy guys that are up, and girls aboard ship is at a premium. So doing Dad Day today with football.
Bless her for doing it. And by the way, I consider Arizona and Navy to be the biggest oxymoron. Ain't saying, just saying.
Well, I was in uniform over with the Coast Guard at the Military Vehicle Collectors Show, and I told Captain Dev, I said, the next guy that walks up to me and goes, "What is the Coast Guard doing in Arizona? We have desert." I'm just going to stab him in the leg and present him to the Wounded Warrior Program. Here.
Go for it.
It's amazing.
I understand.
Aren't we in the center of boating here? It's just 1,000 miles in any direction.
We have well
said.
We have part of southern Utah, Nevada, starting with Powell, Meade, Mojave, Havasu, all the way down the Colorado River.
He just loves impoundments,
unless they're quarter pointed. Anyway, all right. I know you got to go. I want to thank you for coming down. Every time we have a AZGFD function, you're right in the middle of it. I mean, you're the guy that makes stuff happen.
Well, thank you, Don. I really have a great job, and I get to be with sportsmen's groups and with the public and take a few barbs, but also share the mission of the outfit and what we're doing in managing and conserving our wildlife. We do that in trust for the citizens of Arizona.
Yes, sir. I don't know if I'd want the job of trying to keep track of Director Boyle.
No. I would love his frequent flyer miles. That's about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's been my pleasure today. It's always good to visit with you guys. Thank you for having me on the radio program, and I hope that I shared some information that's valuable for your listeners.
I didn't know the whole story about Smokey the Bear, to be real honest with you.
Or that I could sing, huh?
I was more impressed with his singing, not only that he sang, but he knew every word.
Every word.
And that goes back a long way. I don't know where Jennifer got that. Bless her soul, she can find something that none of us will ever be able to.
Good job,
but have
Jennifer.
That song on, boom. That was perfect. And he knew every word, and he sang well.
Before you get out of here, what's the next big event we've got coming up with the department?
I'd have to look at my calendar. I don't know. Expo is going to be the end of March, and that's our big showcase event. So
we're in.
Yep, and we're expecting 50,000 people to come enjoy outdoors and wildlife.
That's an awesome event. We've watched that whole thing evolve. From 4 people and 3 vendors to 50,000 people. Bill Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram will be out there.
That's great.
Yeah. Scott Lavin. They're trying to do a NEPA and all this stuff to put in an ATV track. I'm going, what?
Yeah, a little test ride. You can get on a
why
razor.
do we have to go through all the paperwork?
Well,
are you kidding me?
We have to obey the law.
It's your ground.
Yeah, but it's state agency ground. It is not private property.
I can come out and make a path with Big Sexy.
Oh, yes, you could.
We will call that a test track.
Well, let's put it this way. We've been screaming bloody murder about the 2,000 plus miles of Big Sexy Trail that have been created through the Apache Sitgraves virtue of quads.
Yeah.
We can't do that. You have to take a process now.
Boy, you guys are so serious.
I was born serious, Don.
I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to take potential would-be Jeep buyers for a ride.
Good.
We did that out at Lake Pleasant.
Are you talking rock crawlers or Jeep buyers?
Jeep buyers.
Trail riders, not rock crawlers.
Yeah, we tried that up on Black's Mountain, and from what I understand, one of the Jeeps spent about a week and a half in the body shop with Wally. Little frame straightening and some spring shackles, and woohoo!
Some extreme opportunities.
It's good
aren't
stuff.
there?
When's the the date for the expo?
March 28th. Yeah, something
28th, 29th.
It's about
I believe.
a week after Bass Days.
Right.
Yep, that's right.
That's the other thing. You know, I have to thank you and everybody at the department for kicking it at Bass Days. We've got Josh Hurst coming out with the OGG trailer. Always good stuff to see. We've got Kim Jackson from Boating Safety, Tom McMahon, and Cammy coming out with aquatic invasive species, backyard bass for the kids, and that's pretty cool.
I like the backyard bass.
Yeah,
That's fun.
Yeah, that's fun.
You had a blast last year.
Yep, I did.
Yeah. So, you know, we'll showcase all the good stuff that the department does out there, and hope to see everybody come out and, you know, shake hands. And I don't know if is Kenny D going to be out there. I mean, he's taken a hiatus from OGT.
Yeah, he's been
Josh
invisible.
Is in, and
Well, I guess we'll just see. I don't know for sure.
I'm stunned. I come out to the commission meeting, and now there's a new security thing like you have to go through at the airport, and there's Kenny D in uniform.
You know,
dressed up.
we call him Dink. He's
Dink.
Yeah,
Dink.
Yeah, and he's in a new position too. So
Exactly.
Josh did take his position in Operation Game Thief, and he moved into a management position, law enforcement management. So, but he still likes to get out, and he loves
Rolling in the dirt.
Yep, you bet. Yep.
Yeah, he just looks
I
outstanding
swear,
in uniform.
If you get that in your blood like we have,
Yeah.
you can't get it out of
Oh
us
no,
no
you
matter
seek
what.
opportunities. You
Yeah.
know, you make excuses to go to the woods.
Yes.
I don't see how they keep Kenny in the office, because I know, we spend 3 days out in the woods.
We don't want to come back.
I can't sit in the office for a week. You know?
Yeah, well, when I spend 3 days in the woods, that makes me able to go back to the office. Otherwise, I'm kind of antsy, you know. So
I don't know. Well, hey, thanks for coming down. Have a blessed day today, and I hope your favorite team wins the Super Bowl.
I enjoyed it, and God's best to you guys. Appreciate what you do here.
I appreciate you saying that. JK, you want to talk about coyotes in your hometown?
Yeah, Oakland County, Michigan is being heavily inundated with
They're
coyotes.
killing horses.
Killing
Are you
horses.
kidding me? We'll be right back.
In the morning, whiskey still running through my head. I could get out of bed, or maybe I'll just have another cigarette. As long as I can remember, seems all I've ever done is work.
All righty, we're back. JK, I want to ask you,
Okay.
coyotes killing horses in your home county back in Michigan. What is up with that?
Well, if you go back to the 30 years it's been since I lived there, we didn't have coyotes back then.
You know,
Or they're
it's
very, very, very rare. But because of the survival instincts that they have and the way they've migrated to the east,
Absolutely.
you didn't have. I mean, I never saw a coyote when I was living there.
Really?
Yeah, never saw it. We'd hunt fox, but we'd never. Coyotes were not there, and we knew there were some wolves in the UP, the Upper Peninsula, but that was about it. But now they actually took down a horse and they killed it, and then they chased another one. There's two instances where two mares, and they're older mares, but one was killed, and the other, she had a gouge about 2 feet long along her flank that they think that she ran into a fence or something. She was petrified, of course, because they were trying to take her down. And
Yeah.
you know how they do. When they're hunting in a pack, and coyotes will do that.
They do.
And they're a little bit bigger animal out there. They seem to have survived, and I'm sure there's some genetic crossbreeding that's gone on. But their coyotes are bigger, meaner, nastier, and now they're starting to go after some of the livestock.
Well, I find it interesting being a subscriber to Tom Remington and Tom being one of our advocates here on Shake, Rattle, and Troll. He does a good job of keeping up with stuff. I don't know where he comes up with all the stuff that he writes about it, but it's just stunning, amazing, and
well, that made big news back in Michigan.
I bet it did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the article that came out not too long ago, about 6 months ago, over 2,000 coyotes living in the city limits of Chicago.
Yeah.
And doing rather well.
Oh, they're gonna do phenomenally well in Chicago. There is no doubt. You've got and the same thing's going to happen in Detroit. You have all the abandoned structures that have, from the migration of people away from the big cities and loss of jobs, and quite frankly, they have so many that have been abandoned. due to the economies, that they're starting to thrive in those cities. And I mean, you can't possibly, because of the growth, just nature. You have water. You have all the things that, plants need to survive and grow. The thickets there, you could have a coyote pack living within 300 yards of a house and you'd never know it.
Bam, yeah. I was on a Northwest Phoenix yesterday. We had a little bit of a birthday party, and it ended up on a let's say a home farm where lambs and sheep were being grown, and the proprietor for the last 20 some odd years has had a radio out in his corral on a talk radio station.
Really?
24/7 for 20 years. He's been through 34 radios. And he says, as long as my radio is on, I don't have a problem with coyotes.
Oh.
I just
blast them into
I was stunned.
Yeah. Huh.
So, yeah, pretty interesting.
Well, they are a very adaptive animal.
They are. Absolutely, they are.
Of anything, number one, there's nothing about a coyote that is edible, and they will eat anything, and I mean anything. And they will roll in everything. They are carrion. They carry diseases. When you harvest one, I was always told by the best of the best that you carry a black garbage bag with a lot of flea and tick powder, and you dump them in that, and you shake the bag with them in it, and then you might be able to harvest some of that fur. But other than that, you're taking your life into your hands if you don't.
I think I'll talk to our trapping buddy Scott about that. Scott Corcoran from Southwest Fur Harvesters. He handles them quite a bit.
He knows.
And I don't know that, albeit I've been with him on numerous occasions, I don't know what special precaution he takes.
Ned Burris, when we'd go out, he took me out a couple times, and we traveled all throughout, the rim country, and we'd whack a couple of coyotes. He always had the black particularly in the summer, towards the beginning of the season.
Sure. They
have so many ticks and so many fleas and so many bad things about them that's one of the things they tell you. All the trapping clubs, they always said the same thing when I'd go to the Arizona Predator Callers meeting. They said, make sure you have this, make sure you have that, make sure you wear gloves. You don't want to get cut doing this with that. They carry disease.
Yeah, absolutely, they do.
Yep.
What's your overall thought and take on this fair chase issue? We talked a little bit about the real live updates from your cell phone, that kind of thing. Have you messed around with one of those particular trail cams?
No, I have not. And, I don't see... Everybody has their own mental imagery of what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I'm not so concerned with capturing the biggest, largest animal ever as enjoying the experience and putting my skills. And that skill set is something that I do. I'm not condemning anybody who does, who uses trail cams to locate a general vicinity of where a big animal is. But if you're doing real time so that you don't have to be out there and you know exactly the time of day and you pattern an animal, then you're losing fair chase. I don't care what anybody says about that. I mean, that's just my personal preference. But I'm not going to go out there and utilize all that's available to us, whether it is, the weaponry now that you don't have to even have a skill set, or whether it's the drones that you could fly to find out where the herd is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair
chase.
Well,
I'm looking at rescoping a couple of long guns. Some of the scopes that are out, especially with Explorer, I like their optics. You're getting into situations where you have built-in range finders. You turn your scope on. It's battery powered. It starts calculating shots. It'll calculate windage, drift, bullet spin, all kinds of things that.
Okay, here's the trade-off. You don't have wounding of animals if you're that consistent then. But the problem is when is it the machinery doing it and not you? There's a skill to shooting. I recognize that.
Oh, absolutely.
You have it. I don't, because you put your time in. That's the key. There are too many people who won't put any time in and who will want to shoot 1,000 yards. Those are the people that annoy me to no end. If somebody is consistently doing it at 1,000 yards and they're that good a shot, then fine, because that's a skill that they've acquired. to do what they want to do.
Yeah, there's a program, Long Range Pursuit. It was a pretty interesting show. I was pretty fascinated when it first came on, but, like you and I have talked, not everyone has the equipment nor the skill set to make a shot over 300 yards.
Right.
And you pull on a, big game animal that's anything over 400 yards in my mind's a long shot, much less, the 7 to 1,000 meter shot. Pretty amazing. Anyway, when we come back, hey, we're going to get an update on the Mother Lake from our master rod builder, James Guggenauer, in downtown Payson. And I'll bet you it's not foggy up there.
Oh, I bet it is totally
socked in. A San Diego day. We'll be right back.
Well, the morning's kind of damp. I'm not worried about cutting the grass. Left my truck at the boat ramp, and my boat is full of gas. My old boss thinks I'm sick today. He won't have me to harass, 'cause I'm out here on the river, and he can kiss my big old bass.
Yeah, if you can find it in the fog.
Are you there, Jim? Jim, can we find you?
Hey, good morning.
What kind of a day do you have today, my brother?
Oh, we have a damp, foggy, kind of chilly, misty kind of morning.
What's visibility up there now?
It's a little bit clearer now. This morning it was more foggy, but I can see 10 miles now.
Oh, never mind. Fine, be that way.
Yeah, we still have slim to none down here at the
if you can see 400 yards, you're doing well down here.
Yeah, I heard that it was pretty fogged in down there.
Well, let's get right to the chase here. Who's your pick for the Super Bowl today?
I was listening to JK a little earlier, and I have to say that I got 2 words for him. It would be go Seahawks.
Here we go.
Again. Okay, I will remember this next Sunday.
Well, maybe they have a kicker, Jim.
That's right. And I like
it's always good to have a kicker. Yeah, I don't care what you're playing. Basketball, football, bass fishing. Woo.
Right.
Good stuff. Hey, what's happening over on Roosevelt?
Hey, the big talk up here in all around Rim Country is the rain. 3 inches of rain reported in some areas. And in Tonto Basin, Art Chamberlain down there, I was talking to him the other day, and he had 3 inches plus at his rain gauge.
Wow.
So, good report. I was looking at the Salt River. I was looking at the flow of the Salt River, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I can believe it, that it was close yesterday to its all-time high flow. All-time high of like 6,600 cubic feet per second into Roosevelt Lake, and yesterday it was like 6,400.
Little known fact about the Salt River, we have at certain times of the year, JK, you'll love this, and I invite you to participate anytime, some world-class whitewater rapids, Class 5s.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Been there, done that, man. I'll tell you, what a trip.
Not going to do that.
The depth at the Salt River, this is just above Roosevelt Lake, went from 7 feet to just under 14 feet. So it's running good up there this morning.
Yikes.
So that's the good news. The lake went up 1%. We're up to 43%. We'll probably be at 44% before we get done here. And good thing, a lot of people understand that we'll sacrifice a couple of days of fishing to get the needed water and the future flow into the lake for sure.
If I had any dreams, it would have been that this would have all been snow rather than rain.
We were talking about that yesterday. That'd be nice, but nonetheless, we'll take it. Everyone predicted we were going to have a wetter winter, and it appears so far we're ahead of normal for sure for Pacific.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. It's called geoengineering, so that's a whole nother subject.
Hey, now in spite of the water, in the early part of the week before the rain started coming on Thursday, I was getting really good reports. The guys were catching good numbers. Seems like there's a little bit of activity when it's heating up a little bit. Drop shots and Texas rig and jigs was still the baits most guys were using. So I'm really looking forward to later this week. Let this water kind of settle down a little bit and let it warm up. And I got a feeling that from Wednesday on next week is going to be spectacular fishing.
Good stuff.
Yep.
What about Green Valley Park? Anybody hanging out there this past week?
You know, I talked to a couple of. I always talk to the same guys down there at Green Valley Park. We're like on a first name basis now, and yeah, you know, they're always catching them. You know, they're using their power baits, and they always tell me, you can say power bait, but don't tell them we're using the green and yellow. So
okay,
I told them I was going to have to let that out. That was just they were catching too many trout on green and yellow power bait, not to mention it. But the other thing that was interesting, I talked to another fly fisherman who braved the weather, went up to Becker Lake last Wednesday or Thursday, took his son up there. His son is like 12 years old. They're taking fly rods, and they were the only ones that were on Becker Lake, and they said they had a fantastic day. They were catching 2-pound-plus trout all morning long.
That's a catch and release. You can't keep any off that lake, correct, off Becker?
You're right, JK. That's catch and release. But and that's why they're getting a little bigger up there. And but the guy was just saying, you know, the same thing that we've reported here, that, you know, this time of year there's not a lot of people going up to the rim. A lot of the lakes are frozen over.
Must be a reason.
So smart, yeah, they're doing pretty well up there. So,
well, here's the deal. In the SRT dictionary, you will never find these two words in the same sentence: ice and fishing. I mean, go figure.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that have a little more common sense than others. I'll just say that. I'm not a big ice fisherman either.
There you go.
Now, you go to Minnesota, you got one of those little huts with a heater and.
I've lived in those. I've spent time in shanties that have heaters and TVs and everything else that you want to do.
And a blender.
Oh yeah, but for me, it always became one of those things where I started thinking to myself, why am I sitting in a shed staring down at a hole where there's nothing underneath it for all these hours and hours each day, and it's cold out there. I mean, you haven't lived until you walked out to a shanty that 500 yards out.
No.
And I've seen people taking their trucks and their everything under the sun out there, and invariably somebody loses a vehicle that goes through the ice because they hang on too long and they stay out there till late in the spring. And the next thing you know, there goes their F-350. Gone.
Well, think about it. The first thing they do is they poke a hole in the ice, build a fire, and park their truck next to the fire.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, but let me tell you the Clifford Perch method of ice fishing, because he goes on the rim to Summerall Lake. But in the summertime, he takes his fancy Lowrance GPS up there and gets the GPS locations of where he needs to drill that hole in the wintertime. So that guy knows what he's doing.
Clifford would do that.
Yeah, he would. No doubt.
See, that's exactly what we're talking about, fair chase.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's okay, because there's no guarantee those fish are going to be there 6 months later. I don't care about that. You can have your GPS markers. You can do whatever you want to. That's fine. But in 6 months later, who knows what's going to be
All right,
there.
so what if we have a piece of structure, and this is coming. You're going to be able to put a device down there, be able to access it from your cell phone to see what's going down on your favorite little rock.
Mm-hmm. I know.
It's coming.
It's coming.
All right.
Fine, I like the way you think, bro.
I'm just thinking.
Sick puppies.
All right, what else is happening, James?
Hey, just another update on crappie. Talking to crappie anglers, and the hot spot, for whatever reason this year, and this is strange, it's usually around one of the ramps up there, but this year it's Windy Hill. Whether it's the water level or what's going on there, but, from the Bobcat ramp all the way around to the Badger ramp is where guys are crappie fishing. In the first part of the week, before the rain started, they were doing pretty well. The latter part of the week, it just shut down. So I'm guessing, once again, midweek this week will probably be a good time to go out and try some crappie fishing. Troll very slowly in 20 to 30 feet of water. And when I say slowly, Art Chamberlain says you got to be around 1 mile an hour trolling. So that's pretty slow.
That's drifting.
I was going to say that's not trolling.
So, but he found that, that was the best technique. And using a 1/4 ounce jig head, you want to go slow like that to get that jig head down to the 20, 30 feet depth.
What color?
He was using John Deere, which is a green and yellow color, but and Art is always one for putting a live minnow on. He just loves to tip it with a minnow, is his term. So that's if you go there, you can just get in line because that's where all the boats are trolling. It looks like a highway going around Windy Hill.
All righty, good stuff. Let me ask you this. When you're up at Dunkerby Lodge, are you throwing any swim baits tipped with a piece of squid?
We don't. It's not a swim bait, but we definitely fish with squid up there.
We need to talk about that next time we go up there.
You got it.
Okay. Little known secret.
Be well, James.
All righty, yeah. Happy Super Bowl.
Go Seahawks.
Yeah, buddy. All right. Sounds like there's a bet on that one.
Yeah.
All right. When we come back, we're going to get this thing wrapped up. Tell you about climate control.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down.
Yep. 4-wheel drive, a rifle, and a shotgun.
Yep. That's Johnny.
All righty. Hey, I want to thank Jim Paxton for being here from the department. Boy, you know, he's got
he has a wealth of knowledge and
what a
such
guy.
a diverse background for all these years.
He does. Good stuff.
I wish, you know, there still has to be a little inner turmoil between a state agency and a federal agency. You know, I mean, he was on the ground, which was much more beneficial to, I think, his livelihood than anything else because
it's a mindset.
Yeah, if you get involved with the political front of it and dealing with the feds on the political level, you know, that's like Shark Tank stuff.
Yeah. John, next week we're going to take a little bit different direction. We've got Alexi Hunter coming on for a couple hours to talk about climate engineering. It's been termed geoengineering. It's been around for a while. I've read a lot, listened to a lot, watched a number of open forums. The last one was about a year ago up in Kingman. ADEQ denies it. The government denies it. They're doing it. We've tracked airplanes out of Air America, a.k.a. Evergreen, out of Marana, that are flying aircrafts, putting stuff into the air. And having looked into it, it makes a lot of sense to a certain degree to be able to manipulate
the weather
to a certain extent. But, you know, there's other connotations. Anytime you start messing with Mother Nature, things happen and bad things happen. And, you know, there's been some clandestine talk about using this as a weapon. In other words, if I'm going to come over and kick your butt, I don't need to put troops on the ground. I send you a hurricane, back that up with a drought.
Yep.
You're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get all that. But a lot of stuff going on anyway. We're going to have...
I'm very interested in hearing what Lexi has to say.
She's pretty knowledgeable. Anyway, there is a film next week, a screening, if you will, of this whole issue over at Harkins Theater North at 3420 East Bell Road on the 5th, which I believe is a Thursday evening.
Yep.
Conflicting with the Arizona Military Vehicles dinner.
Oops.
Yeah, anyway. And then I think there's a 5-person advisory board to answer questions on what you just have witnessed in this award-winning documentary, Climate Engineering. 2 awards, whatever it is. Anyway, if anybody's interested, I'm going to give, we've got a couple of passes to this particular episode. And you give us a call at 602-277-5369. We'll take, how about the first 2 callers?
Works for me.
Not to belittle this by any means, but, you know, I think it's something we need to really pay attention to. I'd like to get to the bottom of it. I don't trust the government.
I think that as time goes on, I've become more suspicious of their activities or whatever they deny their activity in, and that That's certainly a concern for me. I'm a 50-50 person at this point on it. Before I thought it was all speculation and I thought it was propaganda.
I don't think it is anymore.
I'm concerned. I am.
Well, we've got so many things going on. There's acres and acres and acres of a electromagnetic grid in Alaska that has to do with manipulating just a lot of stuff. We've got a space fence clear across the lower half of the United States. A big part of it is in Arizona. And, I think we just, as a point of interest, we need to start letting this stuff out of the bag. It's hush, 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 hush. Nobody wants to talk about it, and it's out there. Now, what they're doing is, I'm not sure. I'm just a little guy. I get that.
Yeah, we don't know.
There's stuff a lot bigger than me, and I'm already on a watch list for certain things we say and do on Shake, Rattle, and Troll.
Thank God I'm not.
From a fishing, really?
I'm not.
That's Kozar. K-O-A.
Thank you. Yeah. K-O-A. There you go.
Yeah, it's just pretty crazy stuff out there. But this geoengineering thing, I think, I'm going to call it a real deal. I think it's out there. I can sit on my front patio certain times of the week and see evidence of exactly what they're talking about, the chemtrails.
I see an awful lot of those that I haven't ever seen before.
Trails.
Yeah. What's the difference between a vapor trail and a chemtrail? I'd love to know.
No, one's got barium and aluminum and the other one doesn't.
I understand, but how can you tell? You can't tell unless you're doing some seismographic reading on whatever is coming out.
I've been looking at some stuff that was forwarded to me last week on water samples, because the question was posed and I didn't know the answer to it. Is this stuff getting in the water supply?
Anything that dumps out of the sky is coming into the water.
The answer to that is yes, of course it is, and that's the right answer. We have high levels of barium going into our water impounds. We've got a situation on Bartlett specifically where the water was tested with the high content of barium that doesn't occur naturally. We have stunted fish up there. And my question to Chief Cantrell and his biological team is there a correlation between this and that?
Legitimate question.
Yeah, we've got midget fish up at Bartlett.
Horizontally challenged fish.
Vertically.
Horizontal.
Whatever. Yeah.
Oh, no. We've been doing this too long.
You can't say midgets anymore?
No. Not midget fish. Come on.
They're stunted. There's you catch a 5-pound largemouth at Bartlett. That's a big fish for Bartlett.
Mm-hmm.
There's bigger fish in there, but the tendency is to downsize to get the bite. That when you do get the big bite, you're not prepared for it because you're using a light line and this, that, and the other thing, and
everything goes away.
Yeah, one tick into a.
I would love to know what they're trying to do, and if they're trying to manipulate the environment so that we have more rain or so. I mean, particularly here in the West. I mean, it's been a huge factor. California would have done anything under the sun last year to have had water. We all saw pictures of the lakes and how down they are. I mean, they are under restrictions that you can't believe. And I'm just curious whether this year has been enough to do anything to improve it. It's like when you lose 100% of 80% of your lake, but you're up the next year 10%. That doesn't sound. It sounds great to be up 10% from the prior year, but when you were down 80% the year before, you still are in suck zone.
Well, where I'm going with this, I'm going to tie this back into Agenda 21. And that Agenda 21 is coming back up on the UN agenda in 2015. And what's interesting that I would point out to some of our constituents and folks that George W. Bush first signed on to H.W. Bush signed on to this Agenda 21 prior to Bill Clinton signing on to it. It's a real deal. It's out there. Condensed housing, they don't want us on the landscape, period, not ever again.
No, they want us more condensed living space. They want us closer to work environments so that people don't have to drive vehicles. They want people to commute or walk or hike or bike or, all of that. And they want more natural zones of wildlife so that you could have vast expanses without road structures and without people structures.
Sounds like the hippie movement of the early 60s.
The hippie movement was more commune out in nature. They don't want anybody out there.
Yeah, right on. Well, I hope to see you over there at the the screening. Get your.
I'm going to adapt my. I'm trying to adapt my evening work. How's that? So I can be there.
You are a busy guy.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
So we'll see. My normal dinner with my buddy and the world that we do with our woodworking may have
you
to
guys
take a Wednesday night.
you do some good stuff. I'm waiting for you to start handcrafting deep diving lures.
The only thing I could think of that might even come close to possibly working would be ironwood. And there's
I'm thinking.
Yeah,
the density.
Don't want to do it.
No, tear up your tools.
Tear up your tools, tear up your lungs, tear up your nose,
All
tear
right.
up everything.
Well, I don't know what's in everybody's day, but smells like a little bit of football. Good luck on your pick.
Yay, Patriots.
My pick is I don't care.
There you go.
One way or the other.
I would like to see
I just want to know
win.
who in the hell let the air out of the football. The world's on fire. We've got people crashing, dying, burning, and the biggest thing in the news is
Deflategate. Well, it's worthless. It was worthless, but everybody had to talk about something. So that's their issue that they made.
What about Yemen?
Yeah. What about beheadings? All of those.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
All right, hey man, take the kids fishing, hug your bass boat. We are out of here.